Welcome to another episode of Fist Chairs and Grey, where today I am joined by Gemma Hardell, who's a relationship therapist, who's going to walk me through my paces today and tell me all the things that I'm doing wrong and I have done wrong over the years. So welcome, Gemma. Thank you for joining me.
Have we got that long, Elliott? Thank you.
Oh, probably not. We're going to do this over a couple of episodes, so we may get to a couple of them. But
Oh, thanks for
Gemma, firstly,
inviting me.
more than welcome. So pleased that you've come on. So who do you mostly deal with then, Gemma, in your role as a relationship therapist?
So I have a really broad range of clients, all ages. Well, kind of from like 30s up to kind of 60s, I would say. That's the kind of like demographic, and really evenly split between men and women as well. And I guess a lot of people come to me because they're living a slightly alternative relationship styles. So it could be ethical non-monogamy. It could be monogamy, like, social monogamy, but having affairs on the side. It could be a lot of confusion around double lives that people were leading as well. So it really is kind of helping people that might feel like they're going to get judged if they go to a classic therapist, and, a lot of confusion around sex and kink and everything. And they come to me for a real kind of non-judgmental approach, but some real psychological kind of understanding, and to kind of help when it's really causing loads of tension in their lives.
So do you just deal with people on their own, or do they come with their partners? So is most of this out in the open with their partners, or is it something that they're sort of keeping a separate life and they're worried about their partner sort of being exposed to it?
I see a mixture of both. So see a mixture of like couples together, and maybe there's been some kind of rupture there, or maybe that they have an open relationship and that they've kind of navigated so far, but then want someone to help them navigate the kind of tricky, sticky spots a bit more. Or a lot of the time I see individuals that are navigating kind of dating, or open kind of relationships, or kind of secretive double life relationships.
Okay, so let's kick off with dating, because we cover a lot on the podcast about dating, especially sort of midlife dating, because as I've said many times, it's a very different landscape to what it was in your 20s. And there's lots of twists and turns and things that are different. And I don't think people that are in relationships in midlife quite understand what it's like to actually date in midlife. So what are most of the problems that you come across, sort of people that are dating that they're finding?
I think time, actually. I think we're in a world at the moment where we're just spread so thin. So to actually find time to add dating into the mix, as well as kind of, surviving as adults, maybe bringing up kids, also trying to find partners that are on the same kind of trajectory as you as well. And,
Yeah.
someone that, I think for a lot of women, trying to find partners, men, if they are kind of, in heterosexual relationships, that have done the level of work and that can kind of hold space as well for them. I think times have massively changed, where no longer do the women want to be holding all the emotional labor in the house, and also trying to do that for a new partner as well. We've probably made our mistakes. And that's why we've got divorced in the first place. So now we're looking for something that feels quite different and looks quite different. And I think there's a shortage of men that have done the work compared to women that have done the work.
Do you think men coming out of relationships then from their classically mid-20s, I would say probably somewhere in their 40s, do you think they've learned anything from their past relationships, or they're just going to continue the same mistakes, whether they see them or not, may be the issue, into their next relationships?
I do think that, some of the guys that I know and that I've met and things, they definitely want to learn and they definitely want to upskill, that's for sure. But I think that there's still like such a way to go. I don't think, everyone's like doing the same mistakes over and over again. But it's to what level of self-awareness that's been taken away, what level of accountability that's been taken away from that previous relationship. But also, I think it's also tricky for the guys because they're probably still juggling those other lives as well. So I think it's like, well, where is the room for someone else to come in here? especially if you're still supporting an ex-wife, maybe you're still supporting the family unit, you want to be a good dad, you want to be a good partner, and then you want to have a new relationship that might also have its own family system as well. It's quite difficult to find, how you get that balance. And I think people are really starting to choose themselves over choosing romantic relationships as well. They're choosing friendships. They're decentering the romantic relationship to be the most important thing in their life. And they're actually kind of thinking, well, what can I do with my friendships? I can travel solo. I can do things on my own. I can pay my own bills. And, there's never been so much freedom, I guess, and so much opportunity for women, especially. And so the landscape's really changed. I think women are now really discerning, and someone's got to add something in, not just have another pair of dirty pants to wash.
Yeah. I mean, I get a lot of women that will message me, especially with dating in midlife. And the first thing that they pull up on is most guys that we're meeting, they want to jump into bed straight away. Now, personally, I think that's probably because a lot of these guys have been in maybe sexless relationships or where the passion's gone out of it. And now they are looking for passion. They're looking to fill that void that they haven't had for so long, and that's very high on their agenda. Whereas the women, that's not so high on their agenda immediately. So how do you sort of negotiate that with one with men and two with women?
I mean, I understand this from my own perspective as well. I think for women, they want to be seen on multiple levels and not just desired. If we grew up in the 90s, if women are in their 40s growing up in the 90s, everything was for the male lens and the male gaze. So, we've done years and years of being told, look pretty, smile, love, responding to wolf whistles and, that kind of way. And now it's a bit old, it's a bit boring. And actually, women want something more. They want to be seen, they want their feelings validated, they want to be heard, they want someone that can emotionally stand with them and not end up with them mothering. Because I think that's what's happened in a lot of these past relationships. So many sexist relationships have come about because essentially people fall into like parent and child dynamics. So there could be the wife at home and she's also a kind of mother figure as well
Yeah.
to the guy. And then if the guy is kind of still letting her hold a lot of the emotional weight in a relationship, it ends up in like a parent child dynamic. And of course, no one wants to have sex with their child or their parent. So this is why a lot of sexless marriages start, becoming more and more when we've got this dynamic happening.
So do you think that leads, especially for the women, to think that they don't feel sexy and they don't desire sex anymore, as opposed to they're not interested in having sex?
I think women are interested in having interesting sex. And if they're not feeling sensual and ignited, and that there is a level of like timing and pacing and allowing their bodies to wake up before penetration. And sometimes they might not even want penetration. But I think we've got the difference between what some men think sex is and what women actually want. And the pacing, I think, can be quite different between the two. Also, you've got so many erotic templates as well. You've got 5 erotic blueprints. And if you've got a couple and the guy's got, say, a sexual blueprint, which is kind of, sees boobs, sees bum, sees naked body, and is immediately quite aroused spontaneously, as opposed to the woman that might be more of a responsive arousal. It might be through lots of different kind of compliments and help in the house and, dates and time together, quality time and things. So we've got 2 different systems, kind of erotic arousal systems working at different paces. And of course, it's not a match, it's not turning the women on. And then the men are not getting what they need either. So it's about education, I think. I kind of work with clients to get them to do what map out what their erotic blueprint is and map out their desire and map out what turns them on if they know. A lot of people still don't know. That's the other thing.
So when a couple comes to you together, can you tell straight away whether they're going to be able to work through problems, or do you sort of gauge an idea of where you think These two are just very different.
I think I do see people being very, very different, but I think that what actually you can do is you can help to educate basically on a couple, because I think what see in practice is we've not been taught how to do relationships well. Our parents probably, just winged it themselves. They didn't pass us down any skills on rupture and repair. You know, everything's swept under the carpet. So when this has happened time and time again, there can be very conflict avoidant as well. And all of this means that you end up in like quite unhealthy patterns that you're not even aware of. And then so someone like me can come in, look at the couple dynamic, maybe talk about if there's been an argument or something that's on the couple's mind, or maybe it's sexistless as well, and actually see what is this dynamic that's going on here and how to get you to hear each other and see each other and work better together. Rupturing isn't the problem, but it's that most people avoid the repair.
Do you think a lot of couples, I think it's the conflict of the arguing as well sometimes, isn't it? It seems to be one extreme to the other of where there's either no conversation or the conversation is arguing. It's no longer a conversation. It's just a desperation to be heard and shouting over each other.
Yeah, it's usually a lot of triggers, and these can, when we're in an argument with someone, it triggers a lot of time our either parental responses or our child responses. So how we felt as a child, or how we feel as our parents are speaking to us and wagging a finger, like, you will not say that to me, and we
Yeah.
get in these dynamics. And it's even, my job is to spot these dynamics and highlight those for the clients so then they can become more aware. And so then when they're in a kind of argument or a rupture, they can pick it up for themselves. They can say like, oh, hang on a minute. I'm completely triggered here. I'm just going into my child ego state, and can actually just ask for a pause and actually just say like, look, there's no point. If you're going to be arguing when you're both triggered, it's not going to resolve anything. You just got to take a pause and take a breath.
Fundamentally, though, the couples both surely have to want to make things work and stay together. Or does it often happen where they really want to stay together, but it just doesn't work for them?
I think that a lot of relationships do have expiry dates. And I think that's something that we probably don't talk about enough, actually. We kind of been sold this monogamous dream of
Yeah.
happy ever after, and, longevity is a success, sign of success in marriage. Oh, you've been together 30 years. Oh, how great. Well, no, not if you've either ignored each other, been arguing for 30 years, or not had sex, or not had,
Yeah.
not been getting on and going to dinner and both been on your phones. So it's like, what is the quality of a relationship? And, these kind of parts that people think are the most important thing is like staying together. Sometimes it is actually better to split up and to say, well,
Yeah.
maybe we've come to the end of the road and maybe that's okay. And we can design something that looks like it's going to work for both of us. For instance, a lot of people nowadays, and myself included, are being co-parents. So we might have
Yeah.
come to the end of the romantic side within a marriage, but we can still see enough benefit of being able to have a young child, or a teen, and say, well, look, for the next few years, let's just try and co-parent together and have a more healthy dynamic, but not a sexual relationship. So there's so many different ways that we're looking at modern love right now.
And that I think, especially, I don't know if you're finding this, that especially going from the person that you are in your 20s and then going through having one, two, or three of, how many kids you have, which takes a lot of time away from the relationship because you're investing so much time in the kids. And especially if you've got more than one, one of you's at football while the other one's at dance, or one's here and one's there. And then you sort of get to the stage in your 40s where kids start to become a little bit more independent, and then you realize in those sort of last 20 years as people you've changed so much. Do you find that
Yeah.
a lot with couples that come to you or people that come to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think also there's a real crucial thing of women hit the perimenopause, and when the estrogen drops, you no longer have the level of tolerance for things that you maybe used to have had when you're in your 20s and 30s. And when you're in your 20s and is you're wanting a family, you're trying to find someone
Yeah.
that fits in with that, and it is a bit of a, oh, you're good enough, in a way to be able to kind of stay together, grow together, be able to raise a family, put all that energy in. It's a teamwork thing, isn't it? But then when you're
Yeah.
trying to strip that back years and years later, you know, quite often you've changed. Women go through, I don't, men go through this as well, but women go through an incredible identity shift that happens in your 40s. You no longer are attracted to the things that used to attract you. You no longer have the tolerance. You no longer have the patience for things. You want to explore a sense of aliveness within yourself that maybe you put on the back burner because you had kids as well. And you've been so focused on everyone else that when you get to your 40s, for a lot of women, it can be, well, hang on a minute, this is my time now.
So do you think so? We spoke about this on the last podcast that I did actually was that what women may look for in a man in their 20s is going to look very different when they look for a man in their 40s or their 50s because not as a nesting syndrome, but someone that you choose to have kids with may not be the person that you want in your 40s to you choose to have the rest of your life with.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you've changed so much as a person and everything you've learned about yourself that, relationships just do have this kind of expiry date sometimes, unless you're choosing to grow together and unless you're kind of always turning in together and making a conscious effort. Love isn't a feeling, love is an action. So you've got to kind of to keep love on the table. It is these bids for connection. When someone makes a bid for connection, tries to talk to you and you're just on your screen doom scrolling, it's putting the phone down. It's all these little things, to keep the connection going, are really important.
So modern relationships now, they look very different to what relationships used to look like. Are you finding that more and more with sort of your clients that are coming in?
Absolutely. I think relationships have always been under kind of a social stigma of how it should be. Monogamy by default, I think most people ended up in rather than by design. And now I think when people are coming out of long term relationships, some people want monogamy. That's great. And it's a perfectly great choice for a lot of people. And other people are coming out of these long term relationships and thinking, well, hang on a minute. I might just want to see what else that sits with me, what else I might want to do, especially if you've been in, a very long relationship. And so I think it has always been that affairs and marriage have gone hand in hand. But I think people are also trying to do things differently and they're trying to be more congruent and they're trying to explore different ways of relating that doesn't involve so many of the secrets, the lies, the shame, the complete exhaustion and overwhelm of trying to spin double lives for that long.
Because open relationships now are more on the table, I would say, but I think they're very much still poo-pooed with society. How are you? I know yourself, you've got experience of open relationships. How from a personal point of view, did you manage the emotions of that? Because I can only imagine that's really difficult to do.
You've got to be really good at doing one relationship before you can do more. It's not a plaster.
That's where I'll
So if
stop
you
then.
can't,
I'm struggling. I was fun.
So if you can't do one, let's not get more complicated and add in other dynamics. It's
So
going
what
to
you're
be able to
saying,
do.
if you're good at doing one, you should do more then. Is that what you mean?
I mean, maybe you've got a better chance of it working if you've got the fundamentals of doing a relationship well. So it's complicated. I was in an open marriage for over 10 years and it varied on what that looked like. At first it was like quite physically open, but together as well. But then after a while it became, okay, well, we wanted to do our own things and wanted to see other people. And it ended up with me falling in love, basically. So there's no kind of, you know, easy way to go into it unless you're going into it with like guidance from someone who's done that before, who can hold that container and also can tell you these are
until they're not, basically, is because sooner or later there's going you I believe you're going to meet someone that you want to spend more time with, that and you don't want them sharing that time with other people. And that kind of sounds like maybe what happened with you, was it?
so I actually think that that happens in all relationship styles. So I just think that in open relationships, you're more honest and you're talking about it. I think in a lot
Oh,
of
okay.
monogamous relationships, people are still falling in love, they're still flirting at work, they're still getting caught having affairs. That's why the affairs and the marriage go hand in hand. But actually, it's a lot more secretive. And so if you are catching the feels for someone, you're not going to come home and tell your partner, by the way, Stephanie at work, she's really hot and I think I'm falling in love with her. But in a more open style of relationship, you do have those conversations. So there is a level of transparency there.
There's still the disappointment from the other person, though. Is there
Yeah, of
still like the
course.
heart? Is there still the heartbreak, or are you kind of are you sort of always expecting it could happen, so you're just more prepared?
I think that you kind of understand your own triggers a lot more. And so you might have been through a few different things, a few different scenarios. But if your partner's gone off and they're dating someone else and then they come home, or they've gone off and they come home, you get into the fact that you think, oh, okay, well, they are choosing to come back to me. They're not just choosing to stay off with Stephanie, from work or whatever. But because it's much more open, you can negotiate what that looks like. What does the frequency look like? What does what are the agreements and the contract around that open relationship? So is this going to be something that if you're just on a work trip, for instance, and you're traveling and you're out of the country and you have a connection with someone and, you know, yes, there's a hall pass, for instance, just to kind of follow that through. But maybe the other partner doesn't want to know. So maybe it's like a don't ask, don't tell situation. Or maybe it's full blown, because we've got different tiers and different layers of all of like the way we can do relationships now. Maybe it's the fact that, well, yeah, actually, we've been together for 20 years. We don't want to blow the family up. We don't want to sell the house. We like our lifestyles, but we're just not sexually attracted to each other anymore. But we love each other deeply.